In a nutshell, Churchill said this: don't appease Hitler. And sadly, events proved him right. When war came, Churchill said, "What is our aim?" He said, "I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terrors. Victory however long and hard the road might be. For without victory," he said, "there is no survival." Winston Churchill knew what to do, and he did it. Immediately after World War II, we faced a second totalitarian challenge, this time by an emergent and ambitious Soviet Union. By 1980, with the memories of Vietnam and the Iranian hostage crisis fresh in our minds, it was really not clear that the United States, or even the West generally, was willing to speak up for its interests and values, much less act to preserve them and to defend them. Maybe we had overestimated the dangers of communism, some people thought. Maybe we should back off a little bit. President Ronald Reagan, like Churchill before him, saw things a lot more clearly. "What then is our course?" he asked in a famous 1982 speech. "Must civilization perish in a hail of fiery atoms? Or must freedom wither in a quiet, deadening accommodation with totalitarian evil?" The answer, Reagan said, was neither of these two bad choices. He said we must simply stay the course. If we did, he suggested, communism would fail. It was destined, in his words, for the ash heap of history. His critics at the time were appalled. He was a shoot-from-the-hip cowboy, many of them said, unmindful of the complexities involved in practicing foreign policy. He was, some of them said, potentially more dangerous than those he had condemned. Others feared that he had totally abandoned solid realism, that is, the view that our policy should serve our national interests, in favor of idealism, the view that we should harness policy just to our national ideals. But he was, in fact, doing both. His rhetoric soared, but his strategy was straight out of the playbook of real politics. And all questions about this strategy were answered, finally, fully and forcefully, in November 1989. And that's when East and West Germans took sledgehammers to the Berlin Wall and began pounding it into dust. The Cold War was over, and more to the point, the West had won. So you say why, and I say because Ronald Reagan, like Winston Churchill, and by the way, like the 7 presidents before him, both Republican and Democrat, knew what to do and did it. And that brings me to my third case study, the first President Bush, whom I served as Secretary of State. Even though the West had triumphed, the Bush strategy was to reject triumphalism. Figuratively speaking, President Bush refused to dance on the Berlin Wall. The critics were absolutely appalled. We got a lot of criticism. After 40 years, the West had won. Didn't you understand? Didn't you care? Why did you show so little emotion? But the president's vision was larger than that. Under his leadership, we built strong diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, and we negotiated what you might call the mother of all soft landings: freedom throughout Eastern Europe and Central Asia, the reunification of Germany inside NATO, and the peaceful breakup of the Soviet Union. Why did all of this happen? Because George Bush, like Ronald Reagan and Winston Churchill before him, knew what to do, and he did it, notwithstanding the fact that at the time it wasn't popular. So we judge these three leaders today by the quality of their decisions. And history has proved that those were, in fact, the right decisions. And likewise, members of the class of 2007, history will judge you on the quality of your leadership. In fact, it will judge all of us on the quality of our leadership, yours and mine. And I refer now, of course, to our leadership in daily life, in doing what is best for our families, our places of worship, our companies, and of course, our communities and our nation. You know, some say leadership is a very rare thing, found only in dusty books, the private preserve of extraordinarily talented individuals somehow out of the reach of ordinary men and women. But you tell that to the police officers and the firefighters who rushed into the Twin Towers on September 11. Or you tell that to the passengers who rushed the hijackers on United Flight 93. In the United States and other democratic countries, leadership comes from the ground up. It doesn't come from the top down. That is something that a Hitler or a Stalin would simply never understand. To perform the duties of leadership for which we are destined, it is really important that we never surrender to pessimism, especially the fashionable kind that expresses itself in a cynical or sarcastic spirit, or the pessimism disguised in the perverse theory that we are somehow all governed by vast historical forces. So why bother? Instead, we must focus on our possibilities and not our limitations. So as you begin the next phase of your life, let this be your mantra. Go forth. Go forth and be leaders, as President Gutmann has suggested in her remarks. Make a personal history that your children, your grandchildren, and even your great-grandchildren will remember with honor 100 years from now. Make a history of hard work. Make a history of care for your families. Make a history of good citizenship. And when circumstances require it, make a history of great citizenship. Represent the best of American leadership, because you do represent the best of America. And in every way you can, graduates, you leave this world a better place than you found it. So to you, the graduates of the class of 2007, to your parents, to your teachers, to your friends, congratulations on a job well done, and Godspeed to each of you in the challenging years ahead.